Welcome to a session of On the Whiteboard with Hosam. Today we're going to talk about Measure P, which is on the 2016 ballot in Santa Clara. Measure P redefines the term limits for council and mayor. In a nutshell, Measure P sets for any person a lifetime limit of 2 terms to serve as a council member and a separate 2-term limit to serve as mayor. Once a person has hit their 2 terms in either office, they simply can't run again. Pretty much exactly how we limit our president to 2 terms. Simple, right? If this makes sense to you and you agree with it, then you can simply close the video now and vote yes on Measure P. Easy peasy. You might ask,
Hosam, doesn't Santa Clara already impose term limits for council and mayor?
the answer is, well, sort of. The way it's set up right now is that if an individual hits their 2-term limit, they can simply hit a reset button by sitting out of that specific office for 2 years. Now they can continue to do this an unlimited amount of time, which, let's be honest, doesn't sound like a very effective limit at all. To help illustrate, let's take an example. Here's a hypothetical person. Let's say her name is Jane. And here's a timeline. Now, before we move on, let's set up a counter to keep track of how many total years she served and how many terms she can serve for both offices of council and mayor. Jane decides to run for city council and wins a seat as a council member. 4 years pass, so she's completed 4 years of service. And 1 term on council is done. She hasn't served 2 terms in council yet, so she's not termed out. So Jane decides to run again and wins. Another 4 years pass, so now she's completed 8 years of service. 2 terms on council are done. Now, because Jane has served 2 consecutive terms as a council member, she is now termed out. So she can't run for council a 3rd time in a row. But Jane wants to stick around, so she decides to run for mayor, and things are working out for her, so she wins again. Now get a load of this. After just 2 years serving as mayor, Jane's term limit as a council member is now reset. Yeah, that's right. Her term limit is reset. That's how the rules are currently set up. So another 2 years pass, and Jane can now choose to run for mayor again. Or, because she reset her limit on council, she can run for council if she wants. Effectively, her limit is pretty much reset. Now, for the sake of this example, let's say she decided to run for mayor again, and she wins. She finishes her 2nd term as mayor. She can't run for mayor a 3rd time in a row, so she goes back to council because, like we said before, her limit was reset. And after just 2 years of service on council, her mayoral term count is reset. 2 years later, when her council term is finished, Jane decides to go back as mayor because, like we said, her limit was reset. And she keeps this cycle going on, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth forever. So while the current system gives the illusion of term limits, the reality is that with a little bit of planning and a bit of help from musical chairs, Jane can stay on, bouncing between the role of mayor and council member indefinitely. Actually, the way the rules are set, she doesn't even have to switch back and forth from council member to mayor. By simply taking a time out and not serving any role for 2 years effectively resets all her limits as well. Now, if you're confused, then don't feel bad. It is confusing, which is why Measure P is so important. 2 terms, each office, and you're done for life. Easy peasy. You see, there are many benefits to real lifetime term limits. 1, it eliminates career politicians. 2, it brings in new people and new ideas. And 3, it reduces the risk of influence by special interests. Now, to be fair, critics of Measure P point out one issue in the measure, that the new lifetime term limits are not retroactive. There are a handful of people who have served multiple terms in the past, and those who are currently serving on council who would effectively have all their limits reset once Measure P passes. When the Charter Review Committee was drafting the rules behind this new measure, many committee members were interested in making the limits retroactive, which is just a fancy word that means that people who served their 2 terms in the past wouldn't be able to run again after the new measure goes in effect. But when we proposed this, the city attorney's office said,
it would definitely be problematic because there's not any awareness by the parties that are sitting now or incumbents now that was going to be imposed upon them. So as far as a due process issue, it could definitely be a problem.
In other words, People who would be affected by retroactive term limits could sue the city and would most likely win the lawsuit. So while this may seem like a flaw, it really is the only legal way to set us on the right path. So the question is, do we continue to limp along with a broken system that effectively allows unlimited terms with a recurring reset button? Or do we establish a lifetime term limit, bite the bullet, and push the reset button one last time? I think the answer is easy. Easy peasy. Vote yes on Measure P.
If you liked this video, click like, click share, and head over to my Facebook page to view more.